Okay, so now that we've finished the prodigal son worksheet, we're going to start talking about some important definitions for your first reconciliation that you're going to be hearing a lot. So the first thing is to talk about what the word confession actually means. And a confession is when you admit all of the things you've done wrong. You're not lying about them, you're not hiding them, but you're being upfront and you're telling the priest honestly what sins you have done, what things that you've done wrong. The priest who is listening to your confession is called a confessor. He's the person who hears confessions. Penance is a word that you'll hear a lot. Penance is basically what the priest will tell you to do in order to kind of try to make up for the wrongs that you've done. Your penance also usually is not just for the purpose of you trying to make up for something you did wrong, but it's also to put you back on the right track and get you thinking about the right thing. So some examples of penance that you might receive are to say a certain prayer a certain number of times, to volunteer somewhere, to do something kind for somebody else. Like let's say if you're in confession and you say that you've been really mean to your sibling, your penance might be to do something really nice for them, or to try not to say a single mean thing to them for a whole week, things like that. And then there's also absolution. And absolution is the forgiveness that you receive from God that's given to you through the priest. So it's God's forgiveness. The priest is not forgiving you. God is forgiving you. But having the priest be able to physically be sitting there and talking to you and to tell you that you are forgiven is a nice, what's called an intermediary. He's like the middle person that's communicating what God is saying, his forgiveness to you, so that you can actually hear those words that you are forgiven. Usually priests will do what is called a laying on of hands, which is where they'll hold their hands out in front of them on your head or just over your head, and they will bless you and tell you that you are officially forgiven for the sins that you have confessed. So there are 5 steps to having a good confession, and we're going to talk about those really quickly. So the first of the steps is the examination of conscience. That is when you take time to think about your sins so that you know what you need to talk about when you go to confession. The second step is to actually do your confessions, say your sins to the priest. Then the priest will tell you what your penance is and what you can do to say sorry and try to make up for things. Step 4 is contrition, and that's usually when you would pray the act of contrition, and you would promise to try not to sin again and to try to do better with God's help. And then absolution is the final step. So once you've thought about your sins, confessed your sins, received an appropriate consequence for your sins, something that you can do to try to get back on the right track, and you've prayed, then the priest offers you your official forgiveness. So I just want to take some time right now to talk about the examination of conscience. It is probably, at least in my opinion, the most important step as far as what you have to do. When you are in the confessional, it might be kind of scary to tell the priest the things that you might have done wrong, but all you have to do is just say them. When you're getting your penance, you just have to sit there and receive it and make sure that you do it. When you pray the act of contrition, that's simple. When you receive absolution, that's something that's being done to you. But examination of conscience is where you have to do some real work, thinking hard about the choices that you've made and which ones were good choices and which were bad. And you're going to have to be really, really honest with yourself and honest with God, and have the courage to make a list of your sins that are true and honest and not leave anything off of it intentionally because you don't want to talk about it. It's very important that even if something is embarrassing, or even if something you're afraid that you'll get in trouble, those sins need to be on there. The priest is not allowed to tell your parents what you said. So if you go to them and say, hey, like, I broke this lamp and I hid the pieces and my parents don't know who did it, but it was me, the priest is not allowed to go to your parents and say, hey, by the way, he just told me he broke your lamp. So you don't have to worry about that. It's just you and God, you and the priest, you and your confessor. So you are able to be fully honest with your priest, just like you're able to be fully honest with God. And God sees everything, so God already knows what you've done. And if you leave something off on purpose, he will know that too. So the examination of conscience is a time where, like I said, you sit and you kind of figure out what you may have done wrong and what you may have to do confession for. There are a lot of questionnaires on the internet or in books that you can find where it asks you some questions that help you think of things instead of sitting there and having to try to come up with them on your own. Some people do this just right before the confession. Some people do this on a daily or weekly basis. My mom is a little crazy. My mom has a notepad, and every day before she goes to bed, she writes down anything that she did that day that she needs to confess. So she does a daily examination of conscience, which I'm sure lets her remember things much more clearly. You don't have to do that, but it is a good idea to go into confession prepared with what you want to say instead of sitting down in front of the priest and just trying to figure out on the spot what you're going to say or what you're going to do. So there's a couple good examples of questions that would be on your examination of conscience. Some of those we're asking if we hurt somebody else on purpose, whether we hurt their feelings, we hurt them physically. We ask if there were times that we could have done something good for others, but we chose not to. So we didn't necessarily do something bad to someone else, but we chose to not help them when we could have. Thinking about if you took time to pray. Did you go to Mass? Did you say God's name in vain? Did you say it in a curse? Or did you say, oh my God, and things like that that we're not supposed to say? Did you take care of your body? Did you try to eat healthy foods and brush your teeth and take showers and keep yourself clean and presentable? Did you say thank you to God for all of your family and your friends and all the blessings that you have? Did you listen to your parents and to the other adults that are important in your lives, your aunts, uncles, teachers, friends, parents? Did you hurt other people by something that you said or did? Did you act honestly? Did you tell lies? Did you purposefully not tell people something that you needed to tell them? Did you steal anything? Did you take anything to borrow that you didn't ask the person about ahead of time? Did you look for ways to help other people? There's also a bunch of other questions that can be thought about. If you were lazy at school, if you did your homework the best that you could, not cheating on tests, not fighting. Were you a good example to your friends, to your younger siblings? Were you selfish or jealous? Did you leave anybody out from anything? Have you shared? Have you been impatient and grumpy and angry? Have you always wanted it to be your way and what you wanted to do and didn't take time to think about what someone else might want to do? Have you been helpful at home? So all of those things are good questions to ask yourself so that you can really think about if you've been the best version of yourself that you can be. So the examination of conscience is really when you have to do the hard work. So right now, I am going to post a list of the questions that I just asked, and I would like you to take some time to start preparing your examination of conscience. You can do it right now, or you can do it when the lesson is over. But I really encourage you to take the list of questions and start thinking about it now so that you can be prepared when it comes time for your first reconciliation next month.